Hello, my name is John Nagoski, and I'm from Wisconsin in the USA. I would like to introduce you to my channel, English Reading with Questions and Answers. Chapter 2, Dunfermline and America. One of the chief enjoyments of my childhood was the keeping of pigeons and rabbits. I am grateful every time I think of the trouble my father took to build a suitable house for these pets. Our home became headquarters for my young companions. My mother was always looking to home influences as the best means of keeping her two boys in the right path. She used to say that the first step in this direction was to make home pleasant, and there was nothing she and my father would not do to please us and the neighbors' children who centered about us. With the introduction and improvement of steam machinery, trade grew worse and worse in Dunfermline for the small manufacturers, and at last a letter was written to my mother's two sisters in Pittsburgh, stating that the idea of our going to them was seriously entertained, not, as I remember hearing my parents say, to benefit their own condition, but for the sake of their two young sons. Satisfactory letters were received in reply. The decision was taken to sell the looms and furniture by auction. The proceeds of the sale were most disappointing. The looms brought hardly anything, and the result was that 20 pounds more were needed to enable the family to pay passage to America. Here let me record an act of friendship performed by a lifelong companion of my mother, Mrs. Henderson, by birth Ella Ferguson, the name by which she was known in our family. She boldly ventured to advance the needful 20 pounds, my uncles Lauder and Morrison guaranteeing repayment. On the 17th day of May, 1848, we left Dunfermline. My father's age was then 43, my mother's 33. I was in my 13th year, my brother Tom in his 5th year. A beautiful white-haired child with lustrous black eyes, who everywhere attracted attention. On the morning of the day we started from beloved Dunfermline, in the omnibus that ran upon the coal railroad to Charleston, I remember that I stood with tearful eyes, looking out of the window, until Dunfermline vanished from view, the last structure to fade being the grand and sacred old abbey. During my first 14 years of absence, my thought was almost daily, as it was that morning. When shall I see you again? We were rowed over in a small boat to the Edinburgh steamer in the Firth of Forth. As I was about to be taken from the small boat to the steamer, I rushed to Uncle Lauder and clung round his neck, crying out, "I cannot leave you! I cannot leave you!" I was torn from him by a kind sailor who lifted me up on the deck of the steamer. Upon my return visit to Dunfermline, this dear old fellow, when he came to see me, told me it was the saddest parting he had ever witnessed. We sailed from the Broomielaw of Glasgow in the 800-ton sailing ship Wiscasset. During the 7 weeks of the voyage, I came to know the sailors quite well, learned the names of the ropes. I left the ship with sincere regret. The arrival at New York was bewildering. New York was the first great hive of human industry among the inhabitants of which I had mingled, and the bustle and excitement of it overwhelmed me. My father was induced by emigration agents in New York to take the Erie Canal by way of Buffalo and Lake Erie to Cleveland, and thence down the canal to Beaver, a journey which then lasted 3 weeks, and is made today by rail in 10 hours. There was no railway communication then with Pittsburgh, nor indeed with any western town. The Erie Railway was under construction, and we saw gangs of men at work upon it as we traveled. I look back upon my 3 weeks as a passenger upon the canal boat with unalloyed pleasure. Our friends in Pittsburgh had been anxiously waiting to hear from us, and in their warm and affectionate greeting, all our troubles were forgotten. We took up our residence with them in Allegheny City. A brother of my Uncle Hogan had built a small weaver's shop at the back end of a lot in Rebecca Street. My uncle soon gave up weaving, and my father took his place and began making tablecloths, which he had not only to weave, but afterwards, acting as his own merchant, to travel and sell, as no dealers could be found to take them in quantity. He was compelled to market them himself, selling from door to door. The returns were meager in the extreme. As usual, my mother came to the rescue. There was no keeping her down. Mr. Phipps, father of my friend and partner Mr. Henry Phipps, was, like my grandfather, a master shoemaker. He was our neighbor in Allegheny City. Work was obtained from him, and in addition to attending to her household duties, for of course we had no servant, this wonderful woman, my mother, earned $4 a week by binding shoes. Midnight would often find her at work. In the intervals during the day and evening, when household cares would permit, and my young brother sat at her knee, threading needles and waxing the thread for her. This is where the children of honest poverty have the most precious of all advantages over those of wealth. The mother, nurse, cook, governess, teacher, saint, all in one. The father, exemplar, guide, counselor, and friend. Thus were my brother and I brought up. What has the child of millionaire or nobleman that counts compared to such a heritage?